The moment you walk into a room, something shifts. Not dramatically, nobody gasps, nobody stops mid-sentence, but something registers. Somewhere in the back of every person's mind, a calculation begins. Instantaneous, unconscious, ruthless in its efficiency. They're not deciding whether they like you, they're deciding whether you matter. And here's the part that nobody tells you. That decision is mostly made before you open your mouth. We like to believe attraction is this romantic, unpredictable thing, that it happens to us, that it's beyond our control. But that's a comfortable lie. Desire isn't random. It has architecture. It has triggers. And those triggers fire in the first 60 seconds of meeting someone, whether you understand them or not. The only question is whether you're the one pulling them, or whether you're just hoping for the best. Psychologists have confirmed what the great seducers of history already knew in their bones. Rational judgment collapses in the presence of compelling presence. Ortega y Gasset hinted at it centuries ago. Nietzsche went further. He understood that beneath all our carefully reasoned choices, instinct is running the real show. We dress our impulses up in the language of chemistry or connection, but what we're really responding to are cues. Posture, eye contact, the particular gravity of someone who moves through a room like they belong there. These aren't aesthetic details, they're neurological triggers, and a single one, delivered with precision, can spark a physiological reaction that no argument or clever line ever could. Robert Greene writes about the siren, not as a sexual archetype, but as a force of energy, confidence made tangible, presence so dense it bends the attention of everyone nearby. Cleopatra understood this intuitively, and it's worth pausing on that for a second, because Cleopatra wasn't considered the most beautiful woman of her era. That's the part that gets lost. What she possessed was something rarer, a gravitational pull that made rulers and generals feel in her presence like they were orbiting something more significant than themselves. That pull wasn't accidental, it was cultivated. It was a performance, but so deeply embodied that nobody in the room could have called it one. That's the first lesson. Presence is not something you have or don't have. It's something you project or fail to. Eye contact comes first. And most men get this completely wrong in one of two directions. They either avoid it like they're confessing something, or they hold it with this desperate intensity that feels like a staring contest at a job interview. Neither works. What works is the calibrated gaze, deliberate, relaxed, unafraid to hold for a beat longer than comfortable before looking away. That slight extension, that refusal to flinch, is a quiet declaration. It says, I see you, and I'm not nervous about it. Neuroscience backs this up. Mutual eye contact triggers dopamine release. The reward centers in the brain light up. But here's the nuance. Desire lives in tension, not in saturation. A gaze that's too available cheapens itself. The eye contact that actually ignites something is the one that offers just enough before it withdraws, leaving the other person wanting to earn it back. Marilyn Monroe understood this better than anyone. That half-lidded look, soft and assured simultaneously. It communicated vulnerability and total composure in the same breath. The combination was disorienting in the best possible way. Posture is the second channel, and it speaks a language most people have been broadcasting for years without knowing it. Shoulders caved forward, weight shifted back, eyes slightly downcast. Every one of those signals reads the same way. I'm not sure I deserve to take up this space. Flip it. Shoulders settled back, chin carried with quiet authority, weight balanced and unhurried, and the signal reverses entirely. Not aggressive, not performed. Just settled. Someone who has made peace with their own presence. That quality is rarer than it sounds, and people respond to it viscerally because they recognize it without being able to name it. Greene's dandy archetype gets at something crucial here. The most magnetic people are never fully readable. There's an oscillation, approachable, then slightly withdrawn, warm, then faintly elusive. The mind doesn't know how to file that away, so instead of moving on, it keeps returning, keeps trying to resolve the contradiction. Before a single word is spoken, that push-pull has already created investment. Desire, at its root, is the compulsion to solve a puzzle that keeps rearranging itself. Then the voice enters, and this is where most men casually throw away everything they've built with their body language. The voice is not just a delivery mechanism for words. It's a separate signal entirely, one that communicates authority, calm, playfulness, danger, or desire independently of whatever words it's carrying. A voice that's clipped, rushed, slightly too loud, it signals anxiety. A voice that's measured, unhurried, comfortable with silence, it signals something else entirely. Something people want to stay close to. Neil Strauss documented how Mystery, the pickup artist who became something of a cultural phenomenon in the early 2000s, would deliberately slow his speech, pause mid-sentence, hold the silence just long enough for the room to lean in. It sounds theatrical in the description, but in practice, it was devastating in its effectiveness. The pause isn't nothing. The pause is where the listener's imagination starts working for you. You stop talking, and they start projecting, filling the silence with their own desire, their own curiosity, their own investment in where this is going. What you say matters far less than how you make someone feel while you're saying it. This is the part that's counterintuitive for analytically minded people. They focus relentlessly on content, on having the right words, the clever line. But emotional resonance precedes comprehension. The brain reacts to rhythm and pattern first, then processes meaning. Hit the emotional frequency, and the words almost don't matter. Miss it, and no amount of clever phrasing will pull the interaction back. Ambiguity is not a failure to communicate, it's a strategy. The Zeigarnik effect, that neurological itch created by incomplete information, is one of the most powerful forces in human psychology. Unfinished stories, open loops, the anecdote that trails off just before the most interesting part. The mind cannot let these go. It circles back, it searches for closure. And in searching for closure, it becomes attached to the source of the incompleteness. The coquette archetype in Green's work operates entirely on this principle. Express interest, but not total availability. Signal depth, but never fully reveal it. What the other person perceives is not withholding. They perceive layers, and the possibility of layers is intoxicating. Most people hand everything over immediately, desperate to be understood, to be liked, to close the gap. The seducer does the opposite, offers just enough to activate curiosity, then steps back and lets the gap do the work. Here's the contradiction that most people can't get their heads around. The path to being desired is not to pursue desire. It's to become something worth pursuing. Mirroring adds another dimension, though it operates almost entirely below the threshold of awareness. Humans are wired for resonance. We feel connected to people who reflect our energy back to a slight delay and variation. Subtle echoing of speech rhythm, posture shifts, even occasional borrowed vocabulary creates a sense of familiarity that the other person can't trace to anything specific. They just feel comfortable. More open, more present. Felipe Alves writes about this in Manual Prohibido, how even within a minute, deliberate mirroring can compress the psychological distance between two strangers and transform mere curiosity into something that feels like genuine attraction. The key word there is subtle. Overt mirroring is mockery. What you're after is something that operates below the level of notice, a resonance, not a reflection. But mirroring alone creates warmth without electricity. What actually creates desire is the friction introduced by its opposite, challenge. Gentle contradiction, playful pushback that signals you're not simply agreeing your way into someone's good graces. The brain's reward pathways respond to tension, not comfort. Approachability keeps someone in the conversation. Challenge keeps them thinking about you after it ends. Mystery and Casanova both understood this. The art isn't simply being likable, it's being interesting enough to become a mild obsession. Stories, when used correctly, weaponize all of this simultaneously. Not long stories, nobody has the patience, and attention in a first encounter is fragile. But a single, well-shaped anecdote that surfaces detail, suggests depth, and stops just short of resolution, that's a different thing entirely. It's a bridge between attention and desire. It gives the other person something to hold, something to imagine continuing. Monroe did this in interviews, revealed just enough to feel intimate, then redirected. Casanova's letters are full of it. The incomplete narrative is an invitation to stay. Scarcity is where this becomes philosophical, or maybe just brutally honest. What is rare is valued. This is not a seduction principle. It's a fundamental feature of human psychology applied to desire. Someone who is perpetually available, perpetually present, perpetually eager. They lose value not because they've done anything wrong, but because the mind stops treating them as rare. And desire does not grow toward the common, it grows toward the withheld. Cleopatra's real power was in her controlled inaccessibility. She didn't arrive early, she didn't fill every silence. She appeared, selectively, deliberately. And in those appearances she was so wholly present that the contrast with her absence became its own form of longing. Men who commanded armies became obsessed not with her, but with the version of themselves they became in her presence. That's a different kind of seduction entirely. One that operates on a level most people never even consider. Physical scarcity is the obvious layer. Being everywhere diminishes you, appearing selectively creates urgency. But psychological scarcity is far more potent and far more durable. The sense that someone cannot be fully known, that each conversation reveals something while concealing more, that there are depths you haven't reached yet and might not. That combination, accessibility of surface, inaccessibility of core, is what transforms attraction into something that feels compulsive. Strauss observed this in the field with an almost clinical detachment. Mystery withheld personal information not because he was private by nature, but because he understood that the mind fills the gaps it's given with whatever the other person most wants to find there. You don't tell them who you are. You create the conditions for them to project who they need you to be. It's an uncomfortable idea if you think about it long enough. But that doesn't make it less true. Predictability is the quiet killer of desire. Not cruelty, not aloofness for its own sake, but the kind of comfortable, reliable readability that strips away all tension. Controlled variability is what keeps the nervous system engaged. Warmth followed by slight withdrawal, engagement followed by detachment, interest followed by a moment of seeming indifference. The brain is trying to solve for you, and you keep changing the equation. That cognitive dissonance isn't discomfort, it's stimulation. And stimulation, in the presence of attraction, becomes desire. There's also a social dimension to scarcity that operates even more unconsciously. When someone appears desired by others, when there are subtle signals of other people's attention, other people's admiration, perceived value escalates automatically. The brain isn't making a rational assessment, it's running a shortcut. Others want this, therefore this is worth wanting. The seducer who moves through a room with controlled charm, who acknowledges selectively, who seems self-sufficient rather than approval-seeking, they're not just attractive. They're triggering a competitive instinct that deepens desire before it even has a name. The paradox, and it's a real one, appearing not to need someone is often the most direct route to being needed by them. Then comes touch. And this is where everything either crystallizes or collapses, depending on how well the preceding 60 seconds have been built. Touch is primal in a way that language and eye contact simply aren't. Even the briefest deliberate contact, fingertips on an arm, a hand briefly on a shoulder, activates oxytocin release. Trust deepens. The body begins responding to what the mind has been building toward. But, and this matters enormously, the timing has to be earned. Touch that arrives too early violates the mystery that's been cultivated. Touch that arrives at the right moment, when rapport is high and tension is palpable, amplifies everything that preceded it. Alves makes a point worth sitting with. Anticipation of touch creates stronger arousal than the touch itself. The brain has already begun responding to the possibility. The actual contact is almost a confirmation of something the nervous system has been preparing for. This is why the seducer's real skill isn't in the touch. It's in the sequence of moments that made that touch feel inevitable. Proximity carries its own vocabulary. The gradual reduction of distance, not aggressive, not hesitant, but measured and intentional, communicates desire without stating it. Withdrawing slightly to let tension rebuild. Moving in again at a moment of connection. The body is saying things in this dance that no sentence could manage as efficiently. Each micro-movement is a word in a sentence neither person is consciously constructing. By the time 60 seconds have elapsed, something has happened that feels to the other person entirely spontaneous. A gaze that held just a beat too long. A voice that didn't rush itself. A posture that didn't apologize for being there. Words that hinted at more than they revealed. A touch that arrived precisely when the tension needed somewhere to go. None of it felt calculated. That's the mastery of it. This is what separates seduction from manipulation, philosophically speaking. The seducer isn't implanting desire, they're activating it, creating the conditions for it to emerge from what was already there. The pull the other person feels is real. The longing is genuine. What was engineered was the environment in which those responses could surface naturally. Nietzsche would have found the whole thing fascinating and slightly unsettling and probably inevitable. That beneath our rationality and our carefully constructed social codes, we are still responding to the same ancient signals. Challenge, rarity, mystery, presence. The questions these things provoke. Who is this person? Why can't I stop looking over there? What is it about them? Are as old as desire itself. The difference between the person who walks into a room and sparks that questioning and the one who doesn't is rarely about appearance or status or money. It's about understanding which levers move people and having the discipline and self-possession to use them intentionally rather than hoping instinct carries you through. 60 seconds. That's all the time you actually have. The question is whether you're going to spend them consciously or whether you're going to hand that window to chance and wonder later why it didn't go differently. Desire doesn't wait. Neither should you.